Hello, 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 and welcome to XCOM2 War of the Chosen. This is the class guide for the Ranger or the Assault class. We are going to take a look at one of my favorite classes. The Ranger is such an aggressive and high caliber class, which needs a lot of tension. If you play the Ranger right, he can end up with a significant amount of kills. If you, however, miscalculate, the Ranger can get the whole group into trouble. So, without further ado, let's take a look at what we're going to see. The Ranger, as a foot soldier, has no other special abilities than Slash, and that really defines the Ranger's secondary purpose. Besides being a nice frontliner and soldier, the Ranger really has the option to go with his sword. Slash allows you to move twice and still hit afterwards. With your sword that you see loosely dangling on his back. With the sword, you're able to automatically dish out between 6 and 12 damage at the end game. So it's a pretty decent weapon. However, one of the things that I will say in advance before going into the skilling, the problem with melee combat in XCOM 2 is it is not per se bad, it is actually quite good when it comes to damage. The caveat to melee attacks are that they usually are very, very open to pull additional pots, so extra enemies. So that means the reason why this class is difficult to play is not so much that these skills make it difficult to play. It requires a lot of judgment from you as a player, whether or not to use the assault tree down here, or whether to stick with the normal scout tree. Good. Let's take a look how I would go with the Ranger. My philosophy on the Ranger is I, as with all of the other classes, like to play flawless. So the best mission is to make sure that you're not going to be hit once. You want to kill the enemies as they start to appear. You only want to fight one pack at a time. You do not want to fight multiple packs, which means the Ranger has an excellent ability. Besides besides the Reaper, it's probably the second best class in scouting, and prior to War of the Chosen, it was actually the only class for scouting. So Phantom, as the first ability, allows the Ranger to not be revealed when others are going to be revealed. So that has a couple of implications. Number one, when you're starting an Overwatch trap and you're going to hit with the others, this unit will actually stay hidden whilst everyone else is going to be discovered. Keep in mind, this also means that you're not taking Overwatch shots. That's important to understand. If you put everyone on Overwatch and then someone is attacking everyone is in concealment, and you put everyone on Overwatch, and the last guy is basically attacking the enemies, then Ranger with the Phantom will not take any shots. He will stay hidden and will keep his Overwatch unless being discovered. That's important. You need to keep that in mind. So that might ruin some of your gameplay if not being handled properly. Secondly, Phantom is a great ability because on missions where you usually don't have concealment, such as retaliation missions or such as VIP extraction missions, you will see that this character still has concealment. It starts with concealment because Phantom does that. Wonderful bonus, and you should therefore always use him as scout. Blademaster, as the second option, gives him 10 extra aim and 2 extra damage with his sword. Now, hear me out again. All of the sword abilities that are related to swords, specifically this one and the Reaper, are great, but they suffer the same problem. If you don't know when to melee, it doesn't matter if it's +2 or +100 damage, because you will pull additional enemies, and therefore your guys are going to die. So this here is an okay ability. I would only skill it if I am very sure that I'm going to go into melee combat. Next up, Sergeant rank. Shadow Strike versus Shadow Step. One of the abilities, Shadow Strike, is okay. The other one is phenomenal. Okay, Shadow Strike gives you, whenever you're hidden, for the first shot, which will bring you out of concealment, you gain a +25 bonus to aim and a +25 bonus to critical damage. That's great. It can happen twice a turn, because you will soon see that you can reconceal. So that's an okay bonus. No one is disagreeing with that. However, it's being overshadowed by an absolutely phenomenal ability called Shadow Step. The soldier does no longer trigger Overwatch or reaction fire. And the reason why that is so good is you can effectively, even when having 4 or 5 or 6 enemies overwatching, you can just run behind the enemy lines or into a flanking position and simply shoot the guys that are overwatching, use a grenade, use a flashbang, or whatever you feel like to just remove all of the overwatch, and you basically have the full ability to move without being shot. I've seen it very, very often that could happen, and therefore I highly recommend going Shadow Step over Shadow Strike. Next up, Conceal versus Run and Gun. Two top tier abilities where I would say I have a hard time deceiving which ones are better. If it comes down to the wire, I would go Run and Gun because I think it's still a little bit better than Conceal. That being said, Conceal is a wonderful ability as well, so you should skill both. Conceal allows you to immediately enter concealment once per mission. So you're starting concealed, you maybe hit something, or you're maybe being revealed, you can reconceal and you can continue to be the scout that your group needs. Please don't underestimate how important it is to have a scout. Items like the battle scanner, which are just twice usable per mission twice, are an item in a sense. So this character class with this ability allows you to emulate a better version of an item. It's so strong to have a scout because it gives you a lot of control over when you're going to attack, whom you're going to attack, and how you're going to attack. This is only being beaten by Run and Gun, which hands down is probably one of the best abilities for the scout, for the ranger. It's so good. It allows you to activate it in advance, then move twice and still act after having moved twice. So remember when I said you run through all of the enemies and then go into flanking position and kill the guy that was on shotgun? Yeah, right. This is how it's done. You can move a very, very long time. Therefore, I often recommend to give plus movement PCSs to the ranger class because they will help you to effectively be better and faster. Next up, Captain. Implacable or Implacable versus Bladestorm. Both pretty good abilities. One, however, is more essential, so I would rank this highly green. This one here between green and orange. Implacable, after you score a kill, you can move again. Versus Bladestorm, whenever an enemy comes into melee range and tries to attack you, you can kind of claw back. Now, why is Implacable the better choice here? I talked earlier about like moving in with your sword and then kind of being stuck there in the front line, or moving into a situation where you basically move into a flanking position and then being stuck there, maybe exposed. Now, Implacable is definitely going to handle it for you. You can move in, not taking any Overwatch shots with Run and Gun. You can then kill the target and even be awarded with a free additional movement action afterwards. So it will offer you the option to just go back into cover. Super, super strong and very, very versatile ability. I highly recommend it. Bladestorm has its functions in maps which are infested by chrysalids, for instance. You can use the ranger to move on and advance at first. And the chrysalids, which will, by the way, be the only enemies that see through the phantom because they have tremor sense, they will come out of the ground, run at you, and will try to strike you. But Bladestorm basically allows you to counter it and hit them first. In several circumstances, that might save your life because you can, with the right katanas, kill the chrysalids in one hit. But don't take my word as a promise for it. It's still kind of a 50-50 gamble. Next up, Deep Cover versus Untouchable. Deep Cover, good. Untouchable, phenomenal. Now, similar to the Implacable trait, Untouchable allows you to do something after you scored a kill. With your shotgun and your sword, you are going to score a lot of kills. Which means once you kill something, this here will actually turn on an invulnerability for one shot. So the first shot or attack that's being directed to you will effectively miss automatically. This is phenomenally strong because it allows you to place your, if you're for instance only seeing one enemy, to place yourself into open ground and basically take the shot because you know that it is going to miss you. The enemies will always go for the unit with the least amount of cover, so you can play with that and just say, wonderful, go for it, hit me, and the first shot will automatically miss. It's a very, very strong ability. Together with Implacable, after you kill something, being like untouchable for one shot, and also having the option to reposition yourself exactly where you want, these two here are synergetic. They are so synergetic. Deep cover, on the other hand, allows you to hunker down automatically if you do not attack this turn, which is okay. You can like move twice and then automatically hunker down, gives you immunity against critical strikes and another plus 20 to defense. Not bad, but certainly not as good as Untouchable. Last up, Reaper versus Rapid Fire. Two power horses, two capstone abilities that couldn't be designed better. I like them both. In the classical version of XCOM2, I would always go for Rapid Fire because it's better. In this version, I feel both are actually somewhat on equal terms, although I still prefer Rapid Fire. Let's look at Rapid Fire. It allows you to fire twice in a row with an aim penalty of minus 15. However, in contrast to Chain Shot, the first shot doesn't need to hit. Matter of fact, it will shoot twice anyways. So the ability itself is just incredibly strong. If you use your shotgun and shoot twice, you can deal up to 35-40 points of damage easily, not even including crits. So if you load your shotgun, try to use Talon rounds. Talon rounds give a higher crit chance, add 1 damage, and increase the multiplicator effect for critical strikes. So they add additional damage on critical strikes, which, if you want to play this character right, you use Talon rounds as potential ammunition, and you use movement as the PCS. With Rapid Fire, you can hit twice, and that can deal, like I said, up to 40 with crits, even more points of damage. Super, super strong. So high likelihood that you're going to kill something, and surprise, surprise, after you kill something, you're going to be untouchable and implaceable, and therefore you can move back. If you have, on top of that, even a hair trigger in your weapon, I can promise you it will trigger quite frequently, so you will get even extra shots off of it. So now you're saying, what's the catch? Well, Rapid Fire got nerfed. It now has a 5 turns cooldown. Originally it didn't, and that is what made it so incredibly overpowered. Next up, Reaper, which is kind of the counter part to it. And Reaper really allows you to continue. It's like Serial from the Sniper, but in a melee version. It allows you to continue with further melee attacks after you've killed the first enemy. You need to activate it, and then you can like go into this rampage of slashing and slashing and slashing. Sounds great on paper. The reality is that there is a diminishing damage reduction that is stacking. So the first time you're still dealing like 10 to 12 points of damage. The next time it's 9 to 11, then 8 to 10, and it's considerably growing over time. So unless you have a perfect setup where everything's like down to 3 or 4 hit points, where Reaper is definitely a strong ability, you might find yourself in a situation where Reaper is just not going to cut it fully. That being said, Reaper is a very low cooldown comparably. It's, I think, only 5 rounds, so it doesn't have any charges. There's really no downside to it, and if you use the katanas, which is the unique weapon, or the frost axes, which is another unique weapon, both of them will deal considerable damage, will not miss, and you will be able to ignore armor as well. So one could say melee has become pretty good because they implemented the right weapons. Keep in mind though, also as a fair warning, there are a couple of enemies that explode. The Gatekeeper is one, the Sectopod is one, the Purifier is one. So these are typical enemies that you don't want to attack in close combat because you're going to take damage as well. And also Untouchable will not shield you from that because it's an AoE attack and not a single target attack. That's it for the Ranger. I hope you found it informative. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to post it down below, because that helps me to get into contact with you guys. Please, maybe write how you would skill the Ranger differently. See you in the next guides.